You ever hear the story of the guy who swore he found hell? Not in some fire pit below us but frozen up in the Arctic? Sounds like a crazy horror movie plot, right? Well, stick around because once I tell you this story you might start to wonder if he was actually telling the truth, or if he just lost his mind out there in the ice. And by the end of this, you'll have to decide for yourself if he really looked into hell itself. So here's how it all starts. Picture the Arctic. Miles of ice, wind cutting so sharp it feels like razors on your skin, silence so heavy it makes your ears ring. This wasn't a trip you just casually went on back then. Explorers who went north either came back legends or they didn't come back at all. And in the late 1800s there was this explorer. His name's been buried under old books and whispers. But what he claimed, that's what made him infamous. He set out with a small crew, chasing what most explorers were after: glory, maps of the unknown, a place in history. But a few weeks into the trip, something started to shift. They said compasses spun out, like they couldn't get a bearing. The ice around them cracked in strange patterns, like something underneath was alive. And the further north they went, the darker everything started to feel. Not just weather dark, but like spiritually heavy, like the place itself was pushing them away. Now here's the part where it gets real unsettling. The explorer wrote in his journal, and this journal still exists, tucked away in some collection, that one night the sky went red. Not the northern lights kind of red, not beautiful, soft ribbons dancing. He swore it was a blood-red glow, spreading across the sky like fire behind a curtain. His men panicked, some even begged to turn back, but he forced them on. He believed they were close to something no human had ever found. And then they reached what he described as a valley carved into the ice, wider than any canyon I'd ever seen, filled not with snow, but with black stone and smoke. Imagine that. You've been trudging through endless white and suddenly there's this massive pit, steaming, reeking of sulfur, the smell of rot clawing into your lungs. He said it felt like the earth itself was bleeding. Now, I know what you're thinking, maybe it was just a volcanic vent, some natural phenomenon, right? But he didn't stop there. His journal describes hearing voices. Not like the wind whistling, but actual voices chanting, screaming, crying, all mixed together. His words were, "The pit sang in agony." He swore he saw shapes moving in the smoke, twisting like bodies on fire, clawing to get out. And here's the kicker. He said the ground rumbled, and the ice around them cracked open wider, like the land itself was trying to swallow them. The men freaked. Some dropped to their knees, praying. Others ran. The explorer? He kept writing. He said, "I know now I stand at the gates of hell. Not below, as the church would tell us, but above the world, hidden in the white. The devil's prison is not in fire, it is in ice." Man, can you imagine reading that in someone's real journal? Not a novel, not some horror story, an explorer's first-hand account? The crew didn't last long after that. According to scraps of testimony from the few who made it back, half the men went mad. One threw himself into the pit, screaming that he saw his dead mother calling him. Another froze to death, just sitting there, smiling like he'd finally found peace. The explorer himself, he made it back. Barely. Frostbitten, delirious, clutching his journal like it was the Bible. And when he returned, he told anyone who would listen that hell wasn't down below. It was right up there in the Arctic. Of course people laughed. Called him insane, said he'd cracked from the cold. His story got buried. But here's the crazy part. Decades later, other expeditions reported strange phenomena in the exact same region. Compasses going haywire, red skies, sounds in the ice. Coincidence? Or confirmation? And this is where it gets under your skin. Because think about it. Every culture has some version of hell. Fire, punishment, demons. But what if hell doesn't have to be flames and brimstone? What if the ultimate torture is being trapped, frozen, silent, with nothing but your own screams echoing forever? That explorer believed he'd stumbled onto the real deal. Not myth, not metaphor, the literal gates. And who's to say he didn't? Now I know some of y'all are thinking, come on man, he was hallucinating. The brain does weird stuff in extreme cold, isolation, starvation. You're right. But here's what keeps me up at night. If it was all just in his head, how do we explain the others? The crew members who saw the same things, who heard the same voices, who were driven mad by something none of us today can even describe. And don't forget this. The Arctic is still one of the least explored regions on Earth. We know more about Mars than we do about some of those icy stretches. There could be cracks, pits, caves, things we've never mapped. Who's to say one of those isn't hiding something we're not meant to find? So picture it again. You're out there, freezing, breath turning into shards of ice, and suddenly the ground opens. Steam pours out, your ears fill with voices you can't explain, the sky glows red. Do you chalk it up to science? Or do you admit, just for 1 second, that maybe the explorer was right? Maybe hell isn't fire. Maybe it's out there waiting, frozen, watching. And here's where I want you to weigh in. If you were that explorer, standing on the edge of what he swore was the gate of hell, would you turn back? Or would you take one more step just to know for sure? Let me know in the comments, because honestly, I don't know if I'd have the guts. If this story gave you chills, if it made you picture that icy pit in your head, do me a favor, hit that like button so more people can stumble on this and wonder the same thing. And subscribe, because I've got more stories like this, ones that'll make you question what's real, what's myth, and what's lurking just outside the edges of our maps. And hey, next time you look at a globe, trace your finger up to the top, that empty white space. Think about that explorer standing at the edge, staring into what he believed was hell itself. And ask yourself, what if he wasn't wrong?